For the last few days, I have been using the M1 MacBook Pro, the M1 Pro, I'm sorry, not the M1. I keep forgetting that. M1 Pro MacBook Pro as my main computer, and it has absolutely just been it's been such a fun experience. It is the entry-level model. It costs $2,000, and I'm just, I was going through everything, putting it through my normal workload, keeping an eye on battery, charging, like so many cool, fun things about it that I kind of just no longer pay attention to on my own computer, so it was fun to do that. But let me go ahead and give you guys kind of a full over-depth overview of what my experience was like and what I think about the new M1 lineup and if I'm going to upgrade, when I'm going to upgrade, what my decision is going to be very soon. So let me go ahead and start off with the physical attributes of this device. There's a lot to talk about with the hardware because that's been a big change. So let's go ahead and get right into the hardware of this computer. So before I talk about the insides and the experience with this computer, I just want to give you guys a better look and tell you a little bit more about the physical features of this computer I really liked. So number one, I just absolutely love that we have so much more I/O back. Now, I really wasn't using a lot of this I/O. I've kind of still needed to resort to my dongle for a couple of things just because, it doesn't have a micro SD card reader, but I still needed micro SD cards for my microphone and all that stuff. So I have definitely been taking advantage of the SD card slot and MagSafe, and I absolutely love that they're back, but I really haven't used much of the ports besides that. I mean, there is only the headphone jack and the HDMI beyond that, but still, I've preferred to kind of I do love the I/O on this, and I'm glad that they've kind of gone back on their word and put more I/O back. The computer, in terms of weight, is definitely heavier than my 15-inch MacBook Pro from 2018. It's just insane. This is a very heavy computer, even for the 14-inch, so I can't even imagine how heavy that 16-inch will be. But with it being heavy, you do get a lot of advantages. You get a fantastic keyboard, great speakers, you get an amazing display. I'm just completely gaga over this display. The mini LEDs are just incredible. Look at this wallpaper. It looks beyond incredible. Honestly, this. If somebody wanted a computer just for a really good screen and they could afford this, I would tell them to get this eyes closed. The display on this is beyond anything I've seen on a computer. It is so good, especially a laptop. Just absolutely amazing. The mini LED combined with the 120 hertz, it just, the 120 hertz also I did notice, especially when I'm scrolling or when I'm moving around my mouse, whenever there's a smaller animation, you do notice that stuff. Not as much as I would hope, but I still do from time to time, and it just is fantastic. The keyboard is great as well, as I mentioned. I do love that they have brought back the function keys. I wasn't a fan of the touch bar. I do like my physical function key, so I've definitely been enjoying that as well. So hardware-wise, this computer has just, the build quality, the everything, and I do love this little touch on the bottom plate where they have MacBook Pro stamped into the metal. That is so fancy, and it's a really nice little detail that I'm a big fan of. So for this computer in terms of hardware, I just absolutely love it. There's so much to offer here, and there's just a lot. The trackpad is amazing as always too. I completely forget to mention that sometimes because it's just I'm so used to it, but they're absolutely amazing. So hardware-wise, this computer is fantastic. So let me go ahead and show you guys a sample from the front cameras, the webcam here, and compare it to my 2015 MacBook Pro as well. And then we'll go ahead and talk about some more performance and how the battery life was and everything else with this computer. Alright guys, so this is the front camera for my 2018 15-inch MacBook Pro, and this is not the greatest quality. It's fine. It's okay. That's honestly the most I can say about it without being absolutely just going off on this. But it is a 720p camera, and the microphones is everything just right out of it. So now that I've shown you guys a clip from this, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the newer one so you guys can see what that looks like. Alright guys, this is the 1080p webcam from the M1 Pro MacBook Pro. I keep forgetting to say that Pro, but this is the notch camera, and it is a really big upgrade. I thought, how big of a difference will it be from 720 to 1080, but this is what this camera looks like. And I showed you guys a clip of my 15-inch just before this, and you guys can just see the stark difference between the two. When I first saw this, I was just blown away. It's just the quality of this camera looks significantly better. And honestly, I'm just like, this alone makes me want to upgrade because of like taking so many video calls now over the last year and a half. Having a good camera, I've realized, is really nice, especially when you are trying to talk to people. But with this, I love it. And the microphones are right from this as well. I'm not using any additional sound equipment for this clip. So what you're hearing is right from the MacBook, both video and audio. So let me know what you guys think of the differences because I'm just blown away from that, and it's just insane. So let's move on. So now that I've covered the hardware and I've also shown you guys the webcams and how it differs from my older computer, let's talk about some performance. And I'm going to talk about benchmarks and some real world numbers in a couple minutes, but right now I'm going to talk about battery life. And battery life has been mind-blowing. Like, I got the computer, it had somewhere around 80% charge when I first unboxed it and started setting it up. And I spent, I think, 4 hours on the computer, transferring over my Final Cut library, downloading a bunch of apps, setting up my emails, having all those emails downloaded and everything. And after 4 hours of using it, I had 62% battery left. So like, this went through 4 hours of usage and only chewed up like 20% of my battery. It was mind-blowing. And this was while the computer was being set up. Everything was it was brand new. Things were downloaded. So there was a lot going on and it managed it. And it's just been, this computer has been a fantastic thing with battery. And I did a battery speed test as well, a charging test, because Apple claims now that you can get 50% charge in 30 minutes of charging. So what I did was, after I finished editing a video, I was down to 5% charge. So I plugged in the computer. It had 4% technically, but let's just say I had 4% charge, and I plugged the computer in at 4:05 p.m. I checked the percentage at 4:35 p.m. and it was at 52%. So I'm sorry, 56%. It charged a total of 52% in 30 minutes, and this was while I was using the computer. So I had Photoshop running, I had Lightroom running, I was making thumbnails, I was editing some photos. There was some other, Safari, Discord, all these other background apps also running all at the same time. So while being used, while under load, it's still getting to that 50% mark, actually going above 50%. So I think Apple is heavily underselling how fast this battery can charge, especially on the 14-inch MacBook Pro. Maybe the 16-inch, it's the right one. It gets 50%, but with the 14-inch, it was even faster, and it was just mind-blowing. I loved it. It was so good. So battery life has just been incredible. Another real-world test I did was I took a 1-hour Microsoft Teams meeting on there, and that 1-hour meeting, I started off with 66% charge at the beginning of the hour. At the end of the hour, I was at 36%. So it got through 30% of my battery. So while that might sound like a lot, these webcam, these video calls take up a lot of battery. I've noticed, I've had other computers go through about 70-80% of their charge in a 1-hour call. So, just when you're using that camera, when you're using your microphone, you've got the display on full brightness, there's so much going on that it just really zaps through your battery. And only going through 30%, it really just was a really, really positive experience. So the performance in terms of the battery I'm blown away. Like, this is a massive, massive selling point for me because it means that I can stay away from a charger longer and I can actually truly get a day's work done without needing to carry around a charger, which is absolutely incredible. So now that I've talked about that, let's delve into real world performance and synthetic benchmarks too, of course. I think that we have to at this point. Those numbers are always the most like, oh, look at the benchmark. So I'm going to talk about the benchmarks, but then I'm going to do the test that really matters to me the most, and that is going to be a video export test. So let's go ahead and check that out. All right, guys, so in front of me, I have both my 14-inch and my 15-inch 2018 MacBook Pro. And what I'm going to do is start off and talk about the Cinebench R23 score. So Cinebench is mostly focused on graphics. So graphics is very important to me because of making videos. So as you guys can see, the multi-core score here for the M1 Mac is 9,549, whereas the single core score was 1,523. Likewise, when we switch over to the 15-inch MacBook Pro, you guys can see that the multi-core score was 4,994, whereas the single-core score is 1,104. Now, it's pretty much a 50% jump on the single-core and then a 100% jump on the multi-core score. Very, very good result here on both of them. Honestly, it's just, well, not on both of them, but at least on the M1 Pro. The new silicon is clearly crushing it. And let's go ahead and look at the preview I have here of the 2 Geekbench tests I ran as well. And starting off, let's look at the CPU score. So for the MacBook Pro 15-inch, for a single core, I got 1058, and multi-core, I got 5139. Whereas on the M1 Pro, the 14-inch, I got 1581 and 9967. Now, you guys might be looking at this and be like, okay, it's a 3-year newer computer with an M1 chip, you know, of course it's gonna have greater performance. Why are you getting like so, why are you getting wrapped up in that? That's pretty much the point of it, right? It is, but you guys have to remember that this 15-inch MacBook Pro is literally the most expensive one I could have bought. With, you know, it was the spec'd out version for that year. So this is the spec'd out one, whereas this $2,000 MacBook Pro is the entry level for the really, for the new Pros. So you have to remember that the entry level is now able to absolutely dominate the maxed out 3-year-old computer. So let's go ahead and let's look at Final Cut Pro. And here is where things become more real for me, because this is a real world test. Benchmarks are just benchmarks. They're synthetic. They really don't mean anything in the real world. What really matters is what you're going to be doing with it. And what I do with it is edit videos. So you guys can see right here, I have a 26-minute video loaded up onto Final Cut Pro. A very basic one, nothing too crazy going on. A couple of transitions, a little bit of color correction, some music added onto the bottom, but pretty much as basic as I could make a video. Like, this is pretty much the most basic video I could make. There is some stabilization as well in a couple of these smaller shots. These 6 seconds or 10-second shots have a little bit of stabilization. But what I've done is I've pretty much gone to the trouble of putting the same project on both of these computers. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to go ahead and do an export test on both of them. So you guys can see I just loaded up all these clips, so they are rendering. So I'm just going to go ahead and give it a second to render up. The MacBook Pro 14-inch is already finished. The 15-inch, okay, just finished. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, hit share, 1080, next. So it's an estimated 4 GB file. I'm going to go ahead and do the same on the, going to get it to the same point on the 14-inch as well. Export 1080p, next. And I'm going to hit save at the same time on both of them. I'm going to try to move this over so you guys can see what I'm doing. All right, save. And this one is also in your line of sight. All right, ready, set. The second I hit save, I'm going to stop that stopwatch that's right in front of you, and we should see how much time it takes both. Now, another quick test before I start this. The MacBook Pro is at 30% battery. You guys can see the 15-inch. The 14-inch is at 66%. So at the end, we shall see which one fares better battery-wise as well. So let me go ahead, close that out, and go ahead and hit save on both of them to get that process rolling, and hit start. And I'm going to have the background task right here as well for you guys to see. And I will come back to you with updates as they come through, but I am pretty much going to time-lapse this forward. So a 2-minute check-in here, and both of the computers are very, very closely stacked to each other. We've got the MacBook Pro 14-inch at 23%, and the MacBook Pro 15-inch at 22% as well. 21 just ticked over to 22. So percentage-wise, they're not very far behind from each other. The thing, though, is that the MacBook Pro's fans have been pretty much blasting since the second I started that export, but the 14-inch is absolutely stone quiet, and pretty much nothing. I haven't heard the fans on this laptop at all so far, so that's just something to keep in mind as well. Even though the 15-inch might be keeping up, it's struggling, and I feel like it's gonna start thermally throttling at some point, and then we'll see the M1 kind of just take the lead from that point on. But yeah, we are at 30-ish% on both of them. All right, guys, so I kind of stopped paying attention for a little bit, and I missed the fact that the MacBook Pro actually successfully finished. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in the video and, of course, take a look at how long it took. But you guys can see that the 15 inches is right on the tail, but it also says that there's a low battery warning. So the battery's at 10% on this. The battery on the MacBook M1 Pro is at 64%. So it exported a 27-minute video almost and lost 2% of charge. That's insane. And not once did the fan turn on. The fan, it's still absolutely dead quiet. I'm just even gonna tap it. It doesn't even feel hot. Like, honestly, it feels fine. Like, it feels a tiny bit warm, but not even like hot. You cannot call that hot. So that's insane. So we're at 100% and boom, finally done. I'm gonna stop it, 9:55. 8% charge left on this computer. So I'm going to throw up a graph here of the time versus the battery percentage here. And it's just insane to me that, you know, we've got such a crazy difference of battery consumption. So while, yes, the export time on the maxed out computer here has been very, very close to the M1 Pro. I was a little bit in the mindset that between the two of them, there would be a faster one by a ton of difference. And I thought, of course, it was going to be the 14-inch MacBook. So I'm going to collect my thoughts a little bit and come back to you guys and give you a summary on what I thought about these two computers and what my overall feelings are at the end of this testing period. All right, so now that I've shown you guys an example of my real world usage, you know, that video that I edited is kind of what I do day in and day out. So that's the performance I need. And when looking at it, this, you know, one of the biggest questions I had was, last time around, I bought the maxed out computer, and I've always wondered, did I really need the most high-end one to do what I do? And I was wondering, I think the easiest way to answer that this time around, especially like after my experience with the M1 Mac Mini, I realized that besides my edit time, my export time, everything else was faster on the M1 Mac Mini, which was literally a third or fourth of the price of my MacBook Pro. So while thinking about it, the MacBook Pro, I went in this time with a base model on purpose because I wanted to see if I could get away without having to have that big of a purchase. And my eyes were opened a little bit because the reality is that having a dedicated graphics card does matter. And the new M1 Pros do have that graphics backing, but I looked at it and there was a 10% difference in the export times pretty much throughout. Like it gapped, my M1 Pro gapped the 3-year-old Intel by like 10%. So in the grand scheme of things, that is still a difference. And also don't forget that this is a entry-level model, so it's still good. It's not bad. It's just what it's done for me now is it's made me realize that I can't get away with the absolute entry level. So I'm gonna have to jump up to a slightly higher spec, probably the M1 Max with a few more cores, just to kind of be able to future-proof my laptop. Because the reality is now, after using this laptop, I am in love with it. I love the display. I love having those ports. And most importantly, just the whole experience feels so much better. That battery life is out of this world. So I initially was planning on holding on to my MacBook Pro for another year, maybe year and a half or two. But I think that timeline has pretty much been cut. I'm gonna be looking very seriously to get out of my current MacBook Pro, hopefully sell it for a decent price, and then jump up to this new MacBook. Because these are absolutely amazing, and I honestly, I can't recommend them enough. If you're looking to buy a MacBook Pro for productivity, for work, or even just for, using on a regular basis, I can't recommend it enough. If you have the budget, go for it. You won't regret it. Even the entry-level model is absolutely amazing and fantastic. So I can't say more than that. It's just a fantastic computer. So if you guys do have a M1 Pro, M1 Max computer and you've been using it, let me know what you've thought about it down in the comments below. I'd love to hear what other users are feeling about these new chips. And if you're looking to buy a MacBook, let me know what you're thinking. Are you guys still going to stick with the more entry-level M1? Or are you going to jump up to the M1 Pros or M1 Maxes? Where do you land? I'd love to know. Let me know down in the comments below. And if you haven't already, be sure to check out the links down in the description below to these MacBook Pros. I'll have them all linked down there. So if you want to go check them out on Amazon, go check them out over there. Those links really do help when you guys click on them. So I really do appreciate whenever you guys do that. And if you haven't already, be sure to follow me on social media. I'll have all the handles right here on the screen. And of course, linked down in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.